Alors, Suzette, viens. Alors, viens, on vient de manger, là. Viens. Alors.
That's a big one coming right there.
Oh, coming, I see it. It was big.
Alors, Suzette, viens.
Oh my God.
Alors.
She's big.
Viens. Viens. Viens dans la tête bête. Oh, ouais, ça c'est un bon.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Là, on vient de manger, viens.
Oh. What was that?
Some chicken.
Oh. Oh.
Three of them. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Like a bull.
He's huge. Oh, he's under the boat.
He has a red tint to him. He has a red tint to him.
How many pounds of chicken do you go through a day?
It's not chicken. We get meat trimmings from the local meat market, mostly fat, something that'll float on the water.
Oh, okay. Oh, she's right there.
Dang, everything is everywhere. Look, four of them.
Y'all, I love alligators so much, y'all.
C'est un bon crocodile, hein?
Right
Ça,
there.
c'est mon cher ami, hein? C'est mon cher ami. Hein? Mange pas moi, c'est moi. Mange pas mon mère. C'est un beau crocodile.
That's a little one.
Okay, y'all. Oh my God. Best birthday ever. Oh my God. Best birthday ever.
Oh, they're
They're gonna
fighting.
start fighting.
Oh, boy. A gator fight.
Back in the late 60s, when I was a kid, it was rare to even see an alligator. There were very few of them left. They were over-harvested. The regulations they had weren't enforced, and they caught just about all of them. They were regarded as a nuisance. And when we did see an alligator, we'd track them down to where they lived, try to find the nest, and we'd bring the babies home until Mom said they were too big to keep in the bathtub. And learned a lot about them over the years, but about that same time, they were put on the endangered species list. The Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries built the first alligator farm in Grand Chenier, Louisiana, and basically started raising alligators indoors in a controlled environment where they could control the temperature year-round. Here in the wild, once an alligator's body temperature gets below 50 degrees, they can't digest food, so they don't grow much in the winter months. On the alligator farm, they maintain 85, 90 degrees year-round, and they'll grow 2 to 3 times faster on the farm than they will in the wild. And once they were successful with the first farm, they made all that information public and encouraged people to get in the farming business. Right now we have 34 alligator farms in Louisiana. Last season they harvested a little over 1 million eggs from the wild. The farmers have to go out into the wild, find a nest, they bring the eggs in, they hatch them, then they're required to raise them till they're at least 4 feet in length. And then they have to release a certain percentage of them back into the area where those eggs were harvested. When the program first started, they had to release 50% of them, which is way higher than their natural survival rate, which runs between 1 and 10% will survive the first year. And with the high release rate is how the alligator came back so fast. April and May is typically the mating season, usually when the water temperatures get around 75 degrees or warmer. And usually by late June, the nests are built and the eggs are laid, and then 60 to 65 days later they hatch. They lay 40 to 50 eggs in a clutch. About 90% of those will hatch, but the following spring there'll only be 1 to maybe 7 or 8 left out of there.
Wow.
Predators are really hard on them.
Going away now.
Yep. Wait for the next year.
Wait for the next one.
To tell y'all too a little history of them, about the people here. Most of the people in this area are French speaking. They're descendants of the original Acadians that came here from Acadie, which was a French colony in the Nova Scotia, New Brunswick area. They were exiled from there by the British in the mid-1700s, and a lot of them came here to South Louisiana at a time when the Spanish had control of this territory. The Spanish had actually sent word that they were welcome. They would give them land if they came and settled here, and they sent ships to pick up a lot of the French. Of course, the Spanish were trying to build a force against the British in the event the British would have tried to colonize this area. And they couldn't get any more Spaniards to move out here, so they recruited the French. And long story short, the British never came, the Spanish left, and the Cajuns stayed. A lot of them in this area lived in these backwaters on floating houses that they built on cypress logs. Many of them were fur trappers or fur traders. The abundance of fur animals and alligators attracted them, and the French have always been big in the fur industry. But as time went on, many of them made their living in here harvesting the cypress trees. The timber harvest in here was all done by hand with hand saws and axes. It's real evident when the water goes down. There's thousands of stumps in here everywhere, and the process was pretty rigorous. Typically, 2 men would paddle a pirogue, which is like a canoe from tree to tree. One guy would climb the tree to where the branches started with a handsaw and cut the top off, while the other guy was cutting notches on each side of the tree just above the water line. In those notches, they would insert a cypress board, drive a wedge to hold it in there, climb out the pirogue and stand on the very end of that board. And it gave them room to push and pull the big 2-handed crosscut saw back and forth. They call it a passe-partout. And they call the board a springboard because the shifting of weight back and forth, the boards would bounce up and down, and they'd get a rhythm going with that bounce. But once they downed all the trees in an area, they would raft the logs, and then they would sit there with the rafts until the spring rise would come. Before the levees were built, the Atchafalaya River was the deepest and swiftest river in the world, and the currents used to come through here with massive velocity. And they'd use the currents to move the logs into the river and then down to the sawmill. Now, living conditions for those people back here were pretty harsh too. The winters in here are very wet and cold. The summers are very hot and humid. And the nights in here are filled with mosquitoes. They literally eat you alive in here at night. And the only thing they had back then to repel mosquitoes, which they learned from the local Indians in the area, was alligator oil. They would kill a large alligator and melt the fat down into an oil and then rub that all over them to keep the mosquitoes away. Kept everybody away. Alligator oil smells pretty bad. They were given credit for inventing the 2-bedroom house. Atchafalaya is a Choctaw Indian word. It means long, swift river. Did y'all know vegetarian was an Indian word?
No.
Yeah, it means bad hunter.
That ain't me.
Louisiana is also the home to the largest variety of water snakes in the country. Most common snakes here are the banded water snake, the diamondback, and the southern water snake, which are non-venomous snakes. But also very common is the water moccasin, nicknamed cottonmouth, which is very venomous and very plentiful here too. This is nicknamed cottonmouth because when he's ready to strike, they open their mouth all the way, and the inside of their mouth is white like cotton.
I'm glad we didn't see him.
They're not as bad as people make them out to be. As a matter of fact, I got a funny story to tell you about a water moccasin. Last year we came in here and the water was really low, and as I was coming in, one of my guests kept pointing at the shore, and I looked, I could see water splashing, so I turned the boat to go towards it. And as we got closer, I could see it was a water moccasin had a bullfrog, and the frog was trying to get away. And the boat just kept drifting towards him, so I laid down on the deck of the boat. When we came alongside of him, I caught the snake behind the head, and I brought him up on the deck of the boat. And when I went to pull the frog out of his mouth, he clamped down on that frog and wrapped around my arm and started squeezing. The people sitting on the front row had an ice chest, and this guy opens up the ice chest and he comes up with a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey and he's holding it up in the air. I said, "What do you want me to do with that?" He said, "If you pour whiskey in his mouth, he'll let that frog go." I said, "Well, okay, you sound like you know what you're talking about." I took the bottle of whiskey from him and I tilted the snake's head over and I started pouring whiskey in the corner of his mouth, and sure enough, he let the frog me go. So I put the frog and the snake back in the water, and I went back to talking to my guests, and a little while later something started banging and splashing on the side of the boat, and when I looked over the edge, there was that snake with two frogs. I didn't say it was a true story. He wanted some more whiskey. Okay, I got it now. Hello, Buttercup. Yeah.
Did you name them all?
Mm-hmm. This is a young alligator. We're not really sure if it's a male or female yet. I'm hoping it's a female because she's going to be real upset with a name like Buttercup.
She's cute.
A lot of times we get a new gator come up, we let the kids name them. And some little girl named this one Buttercup.
Can I pet her?
Touch it.
Touch
Hurry,
it, touch
hurry,
it.
hurry,
Touch
hurry,
it.
hurry, hurry,
Quick,
hurry, hurry.
quick.
Hurry, hurry, hurry.
Wow.
Wow.
Now you can go to school and tell me you wrestled
Rest of the
an
gator.
Y'all have any questions about anything?
How often do you see gators?
Pretty often. But every time I go to the emergency room, it's full of carpenters in there with fingers missing, holes in their hands.
They're not really mean unless people pester them, are they?
They all have their own temperament, and some of them are very aggressive. We have a hole not far from here with a big male I've been working with, but I shut that down today. I could see the vegetation parting and just that alligator was coming wide open. And he's about a 13-foot male. He's big. He's about close to 1,000 pounds. And when he came out of that vegetation, he was hissing and growling and just coming at full speed. I had to start the boat up and leave. Some of them are like Suzette. I've been knowing her since she's 2 years old, and I used to bring her up on the deck of the boat. You know, she bit me a few times, but by mistake, thinking I had food in my hand. But she never tried to bite me and tear my hand apart. Alligators are not like crocodiles. They don't see humans as food. But the female alligator during the nesting season is very dangerous. If you get too close to a nest, that female is going to come out and attack. She'll give you a warning. She'll come out and hiss and growl at you. If you don't leave and she commits an attack, you're not going to stop her. She's coming. I've had them chase me across the deck of the boat, but I was handling their babies and shouldn't have been doing that. I had them one time chase me across. I had to go under the boat, swim back up, and come over the side. And of course, I had to tell my guests that I had just given them a lesson in the Cajun two-step.